slide that we will use often with families. Again, Leanne has seen this a number of times, and it really does help families begin to understand that there is an actual cost to borrowing. It's really such an abstract thought to them, because you know what, life gets in the way. When you're trying to raise young children, you know, you're trying to, and I know I saved for my own children to go to college. It wasn't always easy. My husband lost his job at one point. We had to step back from our savings goal, but we never stopped saving. And we continued to put away as much as we could, you know, each and every month. And when it came time for my own children to go to college, I do know that that savings account for them was allowing them to have options that they may not have had if we had not done that. So that really, you know, making sure that families do understand that that kind of abstract idea of debt does have a cost to it. And finally, what we do when we talk, again, this is with young families, we help them understand that when we talk about college financial aid as it exists today, what we are saying is how colleges or universities are really going to fill that bucket. And I give this example for families, because what we show to families, and you did speak about this, Parker, that whole unmet need, it really, this begins to help put all of the pieces together for families. Because what we say to them is, if you have a college cost of $40,000, now that's, you know, that's closer to a national cost. Here in Massachusetts, for private education, it can be much higher than that, as we all know. We do show to them, look at the very first thing that's going to go in that bucket that's not going to be covered by the college's financial aid is your own expected family contribution. And that's where it starts. Then in this particular case, or this example, the student actually got a pretty nice financial aid package. You'll see in there that there is a student loan, so that they need to be prepared for what that means for as a family. Work study isn't going to come off of the student bill. It's actually going to be money in the student's pocket that they're going to earn. And then what's remaining is that unmet need. Because families, even today, still believe that colleges out there can meet 100% of their family's financial need. And the reality is that most colleges cannot do that. And so in this particular case, the family's responsibility is going to be $8,000, or in reality, could be even more than that, $11,500. If you back out the work-study component, because that cannot be used to pay the college bill. And so when we really work with our families and help them understand that, they begin to really, you know, come to terms with the fact that by saving, they can touch some of those. They can touch maybe that EFC of 5,000, or that unmet need of 3,000, or maybe the two of them combined. So trying to give families visuals for us has really worked very well over the course of our years of doing this, which is close to 35 years overall. And you know, I think it's just, we have to continue to stay the course and understand that connecting college savings in any arena that we have, any platform that we have, will help families overall navigate through that. So, hope I didn't take too much time.
Great. Thank you, Martha. I think you really do a great job of showing the power of saving, and how even just a few $1,000s can sometimes make such a great big difference to being able to, you know, actually go to college and then complete it. As well, which we know was a big part of the conversation yesterday, is starting and finishing. So you did answer some of the questions I had in mind to ask you in your presentation, but I did want to extend it to others. You know, there are probably some factors that individuals and families are taking into consideration when looking to avoid taking on student loans and taking on what might be too much student loan debt. Do you have any suggestions as to what those might be for folks in the audience?
Well, sure. I think that I refer to them actually as kitchen table conversations. And what that means for me is that families, and I see this all the time with my families that I deal with that have hit the senior year of high school, they are facing trying to make a college decision and have yet to have a conversation with their own child about what can they afford as a family. I had a conversation with a dad yesterday on the phone, and I said to him, you know, you have a good plan in place, but have you sat down and talked with your daughter about what it is you can afford as a family? And that has to happen at as an early an age as a child can understand that. I think it's two-pronged for younger families to understand and convey to their child that they are making sacrifices to save for that child has tremendous impact. We already heard about that from Parker's data. You know, the aspiration and hope that it builds for a young child to know that their family is doing that is really startling. When they get to middle school age, I think it's okay to begin talking about, you know what, we can do this much as a family, and we're happy to do that to support you. How are we going to get there together? And then certainly by the time they hit high school, what does that college affordability mean for a family?
Thank you. And Bob?
I just wanted to pick up on a very interesting graph that Martha had, which showed that there was a lack of knowledge among parents about what was out there for them, what was available. And that was brought home to me, just as there's a disconnect between colleges and the financial aid process, there's a disconnect between parents in the financial aid process. It's perplexing to me because I do see parents, when their kids get to junior and high school, that they seem to have a focus on it. But this point was brought home to me very recently when the state representative, who is the head of the Higher Ed Joint Committee, which determines the amount, or that's very heavily involved in the amount of the state need-based grants, he said that he's never, ever gotten a call from a constituent about their work with those two scholarships. Now that's interesting because unfortunately Massachusetts, known for its college, power, has the lowest level of need-based aid in the country. We rank 50th. Year after year, we do not increase that, the state legislature, and yet there are no phone calls. So, of course, if there was constituent concern, perhaps that would be a different picture. But I think it's a very interesting thing to understand the lack of knowledge of parents around the college aid process.
That's a great point. And Parker, did you have a question? Because I know we have one in the audience as well.
Oh, we can go to her.
Okay. Right here.
Or-
Today we're talking a lot about savings. My name is David Vera, and currently a report in 2015 by the FDIC Commission showed that 7% of households in the United States are unbanked, and that represents about 9 million people. How do we show them that common banking skills will lead you into these type of savings plans for your children? Because that's a huge population that's not even getting served that can possibly take advantage of these services through the financial industry.
Either way.
One of the side benefits of CSAs is it does introduce a lot of families to the American banking process. When we first started, parents come to us with the first deposit as a money order. So we know that they don't have access to a bank. And we urge them, because they're going to have to repeatedly save month after month after month, and we give them an account with a credit union, which offers them mortgage loans and car loans, as well as the repository of their college savings. So I think we do have CSAs have a very positive impact in that regard.
Yeah, and I was going to say something very similar. I think children's savings account programs are a very good opportunity to meet these families where they are. Their kids are already going to school. They're already having other sorts of discussions there and having financial discussions in that setting through programs like children's savings accounts that really open the door for those conversations are really great. I think there are also a lot of opportunities that CFED's been exploring and working with different social service agencies, whether they're Head Starts, TANF agencies, workforce development agencies, community health centers, any social service agency. Financial topics are usually, in financial health and financial stress usually undergirds much of the service delivery there. So it's a really good opportunity to talk to clients in those settings about opening a bank account and why that's important. But I think the educational system, is just a natural one because, parents that are, parents of young children are more likely to be low income because you earn more money the older you get. Your purchasing power increases. So, reaching families while kids are young, whether it's Head Start, children's savings account programs starting in kindergarten or first grade, is a great opportunity to get folks engaged in formal banking and less predatory financial systems.
And I would also add that one of the things that we've learned through the CMA program, working with the State Treasurer's Office, is that building those grassroots community connections is really critical. Because when you are dealing with a family that's unbanked, they have a really kind of a natural mistrust of a very large system. And so what we've learned is that going into those either faith-based organizations or the community-based organizations, those community health organizations, is where it will really begin to make that impact. Because when we talk with people within those organizations and they then talk to their own families, it's coming from a place of trust. And so I think that that's the one thing, we kind of have to all put our egos and leave them at the door and say, wherever it's going to be the most impactful is really where we need to start that.
One more comment, because what about the undocumented? That's an issue. But there's been a solution for the undocumented for a while in the CSA program, and that is that instead of opening up an individual accounts, which is preferable, you can also open up an institutional account, which has is the one account that connects with the bank. But the institutional account turns around and connects with undocumented as beneficiaries of that one account. And that's one way to have everybody in the community enjoy the benefits of CSAs.
Yeah, the know your customer laws and other elements of the Patriot Act and things that came post 9/11 have made working with undocumented individuals to save and open accounts, especially for children, it's made it a lot more difficult. But there are a lot of workarounds.
Thank you. And Martha, did you have a question? We have a question here for you.
Hi, I had a question for Martha. I'm Mary Dyer from the Finance Authority of Maine. And we also have significant challenges with families who think that savings will impact financial aid. And so you had said you were going to talk a little bit about what you're doing to debunk some of those myths around savings and maybe some of the strategies that you use.
Sure. So when we do any of our community outreach programs, whether it's with talking with families of young children, or as we get into the middle school years, which is where we have our biggest enrollment in our curriculum from the 7th grade, children in the 7th grade through the 12th grade. What we do is we show them the way that the federal methodology works today. And that may sound kind of really complicated, but what we try to do is provide to them real life examples of why saving for college, we really show them the math of why saving for college in today's world, so the current methodology, federal methodology, will not hurt their chances of receiving financial aid. And I think that it's really a lot of hand-holding. And showing those families, the dollars and cents behind where the methodology will not penalize them, but also helping them understand that even if they've saved, that's still a really good thing. And trying to help and ask them, what are you thinking of when you talk about financial aid, which allows us to then help them understand that a big part of financial aid today, as it exists, is in federal direct student loans. And so what does that mean for them, for their child, in order to help finance that education? So it's a lot of kind of talking dollars and cents with them. And sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. And we just continue to try to help them understand that that is something that they can't continue to use as a barrier to savings.
Yeah, I just really love the demystification, process that you're talking about. And it really is, I think, that one-on-one, hand-holding, 'cause you're fighting against so much. We see it in other contexts, other savings contexts. Folks are often, with good reason, worried about becoming ineligible for certain benefits and things like that. And so you have to really, come with the facts, and you're fighting against, very reasonable fears and, lots of issues out there that lead folks to believe what they think, and with good reason. So it seems like you guys do great work there.
And I think that what you mentioned, Parker, is really important in terms of other benefits, because that is one of the things that we are working hard in Worcester to help families understand. And we are fortunate that in this past cycle, the treasurer was able to get a regulation passed that college savings accounts are not counted against state means-tested benefits. Now, it's not on the federal side, but I do know that there's legislation out there for that to try to, there's always legislation being put out there to make sure that financial aid and other savings accounts don't penalize families. But, that for us was a huge win, because we can stand up in the community of Worcester and really say to them, that doesn't have to be a barrier for you to be able to save for college.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
We have a question in the back.
I don't know if you can speak to what rates of returns families can expect from CSAs for planning. The 7% seems high to me, but I don't know if that's something that when families see that, it might be that expecting that. So whatever you could speak to that.
Yeah, so it varies quite a bit. It depends on what the account product is. If you're talking about a 529 account, the rate of return is going to be higher. If it's a regular savings account, it'll be lower. But what a lot of CSA programs do is have some match savings or incentivized methods to encourage savings. So what you'll see is the rate of return, and it really varies by program, but it's you get less in interest than you will with the 529 program, but it's often made up for through matches. So if you save a certain amount, many CSAs will match at a certain level. Say you save $500, they'll match it with $500. Also, there's several oftentimes benchmark incentives. So if you complete a financial education course, the child or the family or whatever, you get $500 put into your account or whatever. And so that does make a difference over time. I do think the 529 plans are probably the easiest way to accumulate, but there are barriers to using those with low-income families, and they vary also by state.
I would say too that the question is relative to how long a family is saving. And if we have a family who has a middle schooler that begins saving today, their rate of return probably isn't going to reach 7% because we're right now in a historically low interest rate environment. But if we start with those kindergartners that we're trying to gather up and join into our CMA program in Worcester, that family may have a very real return of, depending upon how long they keep that money in there. So when a family begins to save also impacts their rate of return.
Great. Thanks, Martha. We have another question down front.
I just got one very last question. You mentioned grassroots campaigns with establishing the products that you're offering. My big thing is, are you seeing more cooperation through big banks, or are you seeing it more on the actual level of like your credit unions that may have already been established in that area?
It's definitely a product for credit unions. It's their mission and they have to satisfy their regulators as to their community involvement. With big banks, the problem is that the people that we're gathering as depositors are not likely to be candidates for their other services. So there is one exception, though. A couple of big banks like Citibank out in San Francisco has joined in of major programs for the entire city of San Francisco because it has major public relations assets for them, reasons for them doing it. But in general, I think that it's going to be it's going to be the credit unions.
And I will say that in the Seed MA program in Worcester, the first funder for that program was Santander Bank, and that's because they have a very active community organization within Massachusetts, but particularly in the city of Worcester. And now I think, to Bob's point, what we will probably see are more community-based banks that are going to step up. We actually are also working in the town of Munson, which is a very small little town in Massachusetts, only 7,000 families that live in that town, or individuals. And their community bank is the one that has stepped up to say, we want to do this for our kindergartners. So I think it's bringing awareness to many different kinds of financial institutions that they can and should be doing this.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I think it's, when you have a community-based credit union or a community-based bank, the decision-making power is local, so it's easier to really get things done. That being said, a lot of large banks have really good community development focuses. Sometimes it can vary by community, though, and really just the person who's staffing. And if you get the right person and the right contact and build that connection, it can be very successful. But I think generally, starting with community development credit unions and other local banks is the most likely route.
Thank you all. And it's a perfect segue to our local organization, who's now going to be working more regionally. Bob Hildreth, the founder and board chair of Inversant. Bob, can you join us up here?
Yes, I can.
And talk about the work you're doing locally? And thank you for empowering the families in Massachusetts the way you do.
Okay. Very sweet introduction. So I'm Bob Hildreth. Yes, I'm the founder of Inversant. And Inversant is an organization in Easton, Massachusetts. And what we do is we provide incentives to low-income families to save for college. The two incentives are, first, as you'd expect by the fact that I'm up here today, a savings incentive, where we double what our families save over a period usually of about 3 years, and up to an amount of $1,000 or $1,500. It sounds great because that's 100% return on your money. But we find that our parents find more valuable, they don't want to get rid of that incentive, but they find more valuable is we're teaching them what they want to learn about college. And this is through a college access course, which is given once a month in various cities in Massachusetts. This model will now go to 5 more cities around Massachusetts, further west, so that our particular education-focused college-saving model will expand with the treasurer. The treasurer wants to have college savings plans in every city and state, in every city and town, in Massachusetts, and with MIFA, who is the granddaddy of not only financial college benefits here in the state, but also provides a tremendous amount of education all around the state. And we use MIFA all the time in our monthly college access. I want to start with something you heard a couple of times yesterday that seems counterintuitive, and that is that most of the problem in defaults and delinquencies are held by the people with the smallest amounts of debt. It seems counterintuitive. I would have definitely said it's those outliers with $100,000 worth of debt that must be having the biggest problems with delinquency. Am I going? Oh, good. I'm going to. I want to show that statistically, graphically. So, over on the left, you have the different levels of borrowing. The first bar is 1 to 5,000. The second bar is 5 to 10,000. As you heard yesterday, that's about 40% of the debt. But in the next graph, you see that those first same two bars account for most of the defaults. So it's true. We can also see this regionally or by city. So there is Washington, D.C. up there. Now, for you that are familiar with Washington, D.C., you know that the lightest area in the first box up there. Does this work? No. Well, you can see it. For all of you, that's Anacostia, right? In the right.
The eastern?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, eastern too, yeah. Now, by virtue of that being the lightest area, we find out that the average loan balance is very low in Anacostia. But then when we go to delinquency, it's showing up as red in the next block. And that's that the lightest amount of debt has the most delinquency. And if you go to the third, they also have the lowest median income. You also see that in Chicago, but these graphs in Chicago are actually outdated. If you saw it from a satellite last night, it would have been all lit up with fireworks. Go Cubbies. But clearly, statistically, graphically, it's true that kids with the biggest problems have the lowest amount of debt. Now, I think that's fantastic. Now, why do I think that's fantastic? That's agony for those kids. It's because it's showing the relevancy of saving. You can't, I agree, you can't save $67,000 every year to go to BU, unless, I don't know, you're Donald Trump, maybe. And then he didn't do it either. It's probably somebody else's money. But you can say, I told you, our families are saving $1,000, family after family, hundreds, and even thousands is saving that amount of money. So that means that all of a sudden savings is relevant. Now, why am I happy about that? Because I face questions all the time from foundations, universities, thought leaders, educational experts that pat me on the head and say, oh, isn't that Bobby Hildreth nice? He helps people save $1,000. Now, Bobby, you go over in that corner and we'll figure out how to solve the problems of financial education. In other words, it's dismissed out of hand by everybody, but it's relevant. Wouldn't you like to replace, now, this is why it's relevant. Those low-income kids, and that's where we deal, $20,000 or less in income with $1,000 worth of debt, got there because they had lousy information. They're the people who get all the Pell Grants. They're the people who go to community college, and they're the people who drop out, and that's why their debt is so low. Community college costs very little, and they're all only borrowing for maybe 1 year, and even then, if they have to borrow, it's going to be a small amount because they get the majority of the grants. That's why this is happening, and that's why a good education about these matters with the parents can do so much. So this is our formula. We give parents a tremendous amount of knowledge about where the value is in college and how they can get through it. Right now, among our numbers, there are a little bit less than 50 kids who are going to Salem State College. If you go to Salem State College and you are poor or low income, you have about $8,000 between Pell and SEOG grants from the federal government. You also have money from the state of Massachusetts, though it's pathetic, it's $600. And the tuition is $12,000. So now you've saved money with Inversant, and if you do borrow, it's going to be a very small amount of money, but you're going to a college where our 50 kids graduate, because we have made, it isn't a person who goes to that college, it's a team that goes to that college, it's a family that goes to that college. It's a family that during the first 3 months when the kids have such a big struggle are there for them and can give them the boost, the psychology that they need to keep them going. And once you get them on the tarmac with their feet to the ground after the first 3 months, and and the parents are always there, they tend to graduate. Then we add the savings. They start saving in our program and as freshmen, the families do. Although I got to tell you, by the junior to senior year in college, in high school, to make our savings go, you know who's saving? It's the kids. They've gotten jobs, they're saving. They make up oftentimes one-half of that $1,000 that the parents save with us, or $1,500. And that all leads to lower debt. So what have we done so far? We have about 1,000 families, about 1,200 college accounts, almost $1 million saved. I mean, these people are people that often don't speak English, and they're saving almost $1 million. And then, what did I say? We double it. So that's almost $2 million they have going into college. That's a lot of wind at your back. We're a new organization, so we don't have that many in college yet. 350, 30 have graduated. We span the colleges from, we have a lot in community college, Bunker Hill, especially if you know Massachusetts, and we go all the way up to Princeton and Columbia. We're also in this program trying to address the undermatched problem. A lot of our towns don't give the Latinos the due that they deserve. But we gather them together. We teach in one of our programs also the kids, and we're getting them to college. Sometimes very good, but when I say good, I believe now that value means good. So you have to, the only good is when you get a diploma. Everything else is not good. So, the parents are like sponges absorbing this. The parents at the time of that they get the financial aid letters, scores of them come, and we wrestle with those letters to find out where the value is, because it's all hidden in those letters. So we are an organization, I'll close up here, wherever you are. Oh, hi. We're an advocacy organization. So that's why I was down in the AAU on Tuesday. We're advocating for cleaner, clearer financial aid letters. We're advocating that savings gets on the menu in Congress of what should reform financial aid. It's not on the menu. So those are the things we do. I'm done. I wish I had a great quote, but I don't. I'm really toast here now. All right. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a lot of savings, Bob. Thank you so much. The work you're doing is something that everyone's looking at very closely and understanding your successes. I just wanted to ask you something. You may not be a quote, but I did want to ask you one question about the effect that your program has on the students academically.
Yes. So we're very driven by research, and so we had the Harvard School of Education. Bridget Terry Long is the dean there of the academic dean, and she, along with a PhD student, studied that very question. And there is definitely a very strong correlation. That's the word she uses because the data is new. It's not a causality yet, so I have to be humble about that. But there's a correlation between improved grades and improved behavior with family savings.
Any other comments on that? I know there's other preliminary research going on around this.
Yeah, I'm not as up on the latest research, but I've seen those findings echoed in other studies across the country. Sometimes there's, I think the correlation is the right word, because sometimes there's some self-selection in there. If you are really actively engaging in savings, your family may have better supports and lead to better educational attainment. But it's something that we've seen time and time again, that those that do have savings accounts open are actively saving do better in the classroom as well.
Thank you. I think we've seen some studies that show also it helps with attendance and socio-emotional development, preliminary interim metrics. So we're excited to learn more about that with the CMA program in Worcester. I think we have a question in the back.
Hello, my name is Joey Vigent. So you guys have a lot of great ideas and conversation points about education, not only for the parents, but also for the students. Now, what do you think is the need to be able to educate sometimes our school administrators? Because from what I understand, a lot of times is, where do children get the most information? Where do parents feel that they can trust the information from, that whole buy-in, and helping to educate the educators, so that way the guidance counselors are able to get those children those information that they may need?
Well, I think it starts well before the time a child has a guidance counselor, and I would refer back to our work with CMA, which last week Leanne and I were in the city of Worcester and had an amazing, amazing meeting with 30 kindergarten teachers who were so committed to this program, and in actuality saw themselves as the bridge between the $50 seed program and really helping those families understand the value of saving for college. And so I do think it's a huge lift, to be honest. I mean, schools and principals, superintendents deal with huge issues every single day in school districts like the city of Worcester and other urban districts. But the reality is that the sooner we can get administrators, teachers, anyone basically that will listen to us about the importance of saving for college, it will have an impact on creating a college-going culture in those classrooms, in those districts, in those schools, and thereby helping, with social-emotional development, attendance, all of those other things that are a little bit harder to quantify. That's a win-win for everybody.
Thanks, Martha. I think that's about all the time we have for this panel. But thank you all. I look forward to working together to come up with more solutions and understanding the college savings account programs and the successes we've already had, and hope to have in the future.